dear students, today we will discuss about blood supply of heart. You know that heart is a modified blood vessel. A vessel that supplies a vessel is referred to as vasa vasorum. So the coronary arteries that supply the heart are referred to as the largest vasa vasorum. The coronary arteries take origin from the ascending aorta. Now, before seeing the coronary arteries, now let us look at the aortic sinuses. So you can see here there are three aortic sinuses, that is anterior, right posterior and left posterior. The right coronary artery takes its origin from the anterior aortic sinus and the left coronary artery takes its origin from the left posterior aortic sinus. So the anterior aortic sinus is also referred clinically as the right coronary sinus since from there the right coronary artery arises. And the left posterior aortic sinus is clinically known as the left coronary sinus. Now we can see here the right posterior aortic sinus doesn't give rise to any coronary artery. So it is referred to as non-coronary sinus. Now before going on to the coronary arteries as such, we'll see some of the important grooves of the heart. You can see here the atrioventricular groove, that is between the atrium and the ventricle. Here you can see the anterior part of the atrioventricular groove between the right atrium and the right ventricle. Then you can see the anterior interventricular groove between the right ventricle and the left ventricle. And also on the posterior aspect you can visualize the posterior interventricular groove between the right ventricle and the left ventricle. You can also see the major vessels in this diagram. Now, what do you mean by coronary sulcus? Coronary sulcus is none other than the atrioventricular groove. So this coronary sulcus or the atrioventricular groove is having three parts. The first part is seen over the right anterior part. That means the first part is the right anterior atrioventricular groove. The second part is seen posteriorly, that is the posterior atrioventricular groove. And the third part is seen on the left side anteriorly, that is the left anterior atrioventricular groove. Now we can see it surrounds the heart or encircles the heart like a crown. That's why the name coronary sulcus. So coronary means crown-like. So coronary sulcus is none other than your atrioventricular groove, which has got three parts, that is right anterior part, the posterior part and the left anterior part. Now this is the posterior aspect of the heart. You can see the interatrial sulcus between the right and the left atrium. Then you can visualize the posterior interventricular groove between the right and the left ventricle. And also you can see the posterior part of the atrioventricular groove that we have mentioned before. Now, what do you mean by crux of heart? So crux of heart is that point on the coronary sulcus where your posterior interventricular groove meets your interatrial groove. So the crux of heart is that point on the coronary sulcus where your posterior interventricular groove meets the interatrial groove. Now we can see the origin of the coronary artery. So in this diagram you can visualize it from the superior aspect. You can see the origin of the right coronary artery from the anterior aortic sinus and the origin of the left coronary artery from the left posterior aortic sinus. This is right coronary artery. We'll see its course. So you know that it arises from the anterior aortic sinus. It extends from the anterior aortic sinus to the inferior border of the heart where it winds and then reaches the crux of heart. So the course is, it originates from the anterior aortic sinus. It runs between the right auricle and the pulmonary trunk. It runs through the right anterior part of the atrioventricular groove, reaches the inferior border, winds around the inferior border and then reaches the crux of the heart. Now, the right coronary artery has got two segments. So two segments means first segment is from its origin in the anterior aortic sinus to the inferior border. The second segment is from the inferior border to the crux of heart. And now we can see the branches, different branches arising from the two segments. First we look at the first segment. So the first segment is starting from the anterior aortic sinus and that reaches up to the inferior border. You can see there are a number of ventricular rami arising from the first segment. These ventricular rami are almost perpendicular to the main artery and they supply the sternocostal surface of the right ventricle. Out of this, the first artery, you can see that it is a right conus artery that supplies the infundibulum of the right ventricle. So, the artery that supplies the infundibulum of the right ventricle is the right conus artery. Then you can see a larger branch or longer branch that is passing along the inferior border. So, that is referred to as the right marginal artery. This right marginal artery is also known as acute marginal artery. So you have to remember that the other name for the right marginal artery is the acute marginal artery. Now, in some cases, you can see the right conus artery arises directly from the anterior aortic sinus. You know that there are only two coronary arteries. But in some cases, if the right conus artery arises from the anterior aortic sinus, then this conus artery, the right conus artery, will be known as the third coronary artery. Now, so we have seen the all branches of the first segment, that is the ventricular rami of the first segment. Now we'll see the atrial rami of the first segment. So you can see there are many branches supplying the right atrium also, out of which one of the branches passes upwards along the superior vena cava and then it supplies the SA node. And this artery is referred to as the SA nodal artery. So, in 65% of population, the SA nodal artery is a branch of the right coronary artery. So, we have seen all the branches arising from the first segment of the right coronary artery. Next is the second segment. So, second segment extends from the inferior border of heart to the crux. And now you can see there are many branches arising from the second segment that supplies the posterior aspect of the right atrium as well as the right ventricle. So these are the right posterior ventricular rami as well as the right posterior atrial rami. Now we can see a big vessel, big branch is arising from the second segment. That is known as the posterior interventricular artery. The posterior interventricular artery is one of the largest branches of the second segment. Okay. From the posterior interventricular artery, one artery takes an inverted loop and reaches the AV node. You can see one artery takes an inverted loop from the posterior interventricular artery and goes to the right atrium to supply the AV node. That artery is referred to as the AV nodal artery. So in about 80 to 90% population, the AV nodal artery is supplied by the posterior interventricular branch of the right coronary artery. Now you can see in this figure the posterior interventricular artery. Now we will see the termination of right coronary artery. So we have discussed about the course and its branches. The right coronary artery has got 4 kinds of termination. Usually, that is in the 60% of population, it anastomoses with the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. You can see the marked one. The first, that is 60% of population, the right coronary artery anastomoses with the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. Whereas in 10% of population, it ends at the inferior border. In another 10% of population, it ends between the inferior border and the crux of heart. In another 20% of population, it traverses the whole posterior atrioventricular route. That means it replaces the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. So this is the termination. These are the 4 types of termination of the right coronary artery. Now we will see the left coronary artery. So left coronary artery is short, but it has got a wider caliber. Now we know it arises from the left posterior aortic sinus. Soon after passing through a few centimeters, it divides into 2 main branches, that is the anterior interventricular branch. It's also referred to as a left anterior descending branch, or you can say LAD, and the next branch is the circumflex artery. We will see both arteries one by one. So the anterior interventricular branch is also referred to as the left anterior descending, commonly known as LAD. You can see many branches arise from this artery and supply the right ventricle as well as the left ventricle. So these are right and left anterior ventricular rami. Now, we can see another artery that is known as diagonal artery, that is seen at the junction of the anterior interventricular artery and the circumflex artery. Then there is another artery that is known as the left cornus artery, which supplies the infundible of the right ventricle, similar to our right cornus artery. So in some cases, when the diagonal artery is larger and when it is seen at the junction of the anterior interventricular and the circumflex artery, it appears that the left coronary artery trifurcates into three arteries. That means the left coronary artery, after arising, trifurcates into three branches, that is anterior interventricular branch, diagonal branch and circumflex branch. So it appears like that. So in that case, it is referred to as trifurcation of the left coronary artery. Now this is left coronary artery, the left view. You can visualize the left posterior aortic sinus, the left coronary artery. Then you can see the left marginal artery and the circumflex artery. Then you can also visualize the anterior interventricular artery. Now we'll see what are the septal rami. So septal rami means the branches that supply the septum. So you know about the interventricular septum, that is between the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So suppose if this is the region of your septum, you can see here the anterior superior 2/3 is supplied by the anterior interventricular artery, which is a branch of the left coronary artery, and the posterior inferior 1/3 is supplied by the posterior interventricular artery, which is a branch of the right coronary artery. So this is the blood supply of the interventricular septum. Now the next branch of the left coronary artery is the circumflex artery. So you can visualize here the circumflex artery gives us some branches to supply the left atrium and the left ventricle. So these are atrial and ventricular rami supplying the left atrium and the left ventricle. In 35% of population, SA nodal artery arises from the circumflex artery. Then it also gives off a major branch that is running along the left border, that is known as the left marginal artery. So the left marginal artery is also known as the obtuse marginal artery. So we have seen that the right marginal artery is also known as the acute marginal artery. Here the left marginal artery is also known as the obtuse marginal artery. And then in about 10 to 20% of population, the posterior interventricular artery can become a branch of the circumflex artery. Now this left marginal artery is used for bypass autograft. That means in case of any obstruction in the left coronary artery, from the aorta you can pass the graft to the left marginal artery. So it is used as a bypass autograft. Now we'll see what we meant by the coronary dominance. You might have heard about the coronary dominance. So coronary dominance depends upon one vessel, that is posterior interventricular artery. So it depends whether the posterior interventricular artery is a branch of the right coronary artery or the left coronary artery. So if the posterior interventricular artery is a branch of the right coronary artery, we can say that patient is right coronary dominant, or there is right coronary dominance in that patient. If the posterior interventricular artery is a branch of the left coronary artery, then you can say it is left coronary dominant. And if it is rising from both the arteries, then you can say it is a balanced type, or there is co-dominance. Now, in 80% of population, the posterior interventricular artery is a branch of the right coronary artery. We have seen that. But in some population, it can be left coronary artery. So which one is more dangerous? So you can see here, the left coronary dominance is more dangerous. Why is this so? You know that the left ventricle, the most of the left ventricle is supplied by your left coronary artery. Even though the left coronary artery is very short, it has to supply the bulky myocardium of the left ventricle. The wall or the myocardium of the left ventricle is about 3 times than that of the right ventricle. You can see in this figure. So this left coronary artery has to supply the bulky myocardium. And you know that the SNodal and AVNodal artery rises from the right coronary artery. So if the posterior interventricular artery is a branch of the left coronary artery, the conducting system of heart also should be supplied by the left coronary artery. And also you have seen the septal rami. Now, you know that in the posterior one-third part, it is supplied by the posterior interventricular branch of the right coronary artery. So, if this is a branch of the left coronary artery, that means the whole septum has to be supplied by the left coronary artery. So, that means if posterior interventricular artery is a branch of the left coronary artery, it has to supply the bulky myocardium of the left ventricle, it has to supply the conducting system of heart and also the whole septum. So, that means what? In case of any obstruction, if there is increased demand, there is more chance of infarct formation and there is more chance of myocardial infarction. So, the left coronary dominance is the dangerous one, and the safest one is the balanced type because if the posterior ventricular artery is rising from both the arteries, and it is least likely to cause coronary artery disease. Now, there is another term that you have to remember, that is myocardial bridging. You can visualize here. You can see the artery, then that artery is running for a short distance, then it is dipping into the myocardium and then reappearing after some time. So, it is most commonly seen in the proximal and the middle one-third of the left anterior descending artery. Now, let's see the coronary distribution, that is which all areas are supplied by the right coronary artery. So, you can see the whole right atrium, the right ventricle except a narrow strip along the anterior interventricular groove, then the posterior inferior one-third of the interventricular septum, then the SA nodal artery in 65% population and AV node in 80 to 90% population. These are supplied by the right coronary artery. Now, what about the left coronary artery? The left atrium, the left ventricle except a narrow strip along the posterior inferior surface, then the anterosuperior two-third of the interventricular septum, then SA node in 35% population and AV node in 10 to 20% population. So that is about the distribution of the right coronary and the left coronary artery. Now we will see some of the peculiarities of these vessels. Now, anastomotic networks are said to increase with age. That means as you grow older, the anastomotic networks gets increased. So that means there is less chance for coronary artery disease in old age. Now, you also know that the left circumflex runs near to the mitral valve. So, in case of any mitral valve replacement surgery, there is more chance of injury to the left circumflex artery. Now, we'll see the anomalous origin of the coronary artery. So, we very well know about the origin of the coronary arteries. The left coronary artery, as you know, it arises from the left posterior aortic sinus. But sometimes it can arise from the pulmonary trunk. So, if it is arising from the pulmonary trunk, what will happen? The left coronary artery gets filled up with venous blood. That will lead to cyanotic symptoms and then left ventricular failure. And this left coronary artery can also arise from the anterior aortic sinus. You know that the right coronary artery arises from the anterior aortic sinus. So, if left coronary artery arises from the anterior aortic sinus, it has to travel a long distance. That means we know that it travels between the left auricle and the pulmonary trunk, right? So, now it has to travel initially between the aorta and the pulmonary trunk. So, when there is increased demand, there is chance of more compression between the aorta and the pulmonary trunk, and that will lead to sudden cardiac death. So, this is the importance of the anomalous origin of the left coronary artery. Now, we will see about some of the anastomotic networks. Anatomically, the coronary arteries are not end arteries because anastomosis can occur at precapillary level, but functionally they are said to be end arteries. Now, some of the important anastomotic networks are, you know about the infundibulum of the right ventricle. So, we have seen the right conus artery supplying the infundibulum of the right ventricle. Similarly, you have seen about the left conus artery. So, both this conus artery form an anastomotic necklace in front of the infundibulum, and that is referred to as the annulus of Vuesens. So, that is the first anastomotic network, annulus of Vuesens, formed by the anastomosis between the right and the left conus arteries. Now, next is the interventricular septum. So, you know that there are septal rami supplying the interventricular septum. These arise from both the right and left coronary arteries. Next is the just left to the crux of heart. You can see in the bottom figure, the just left to the crux of heart, what will happen? The right coronary artery will get anastomosed with the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. There is a usual anastomosis occurring. The fourth one is Kuegel's artery. Kuegel's artery means It is an atrial branch of the left circumflex artery can anastomose with another atrial branch of right coronary artery along the anterior atrial wall. And that anastomosis is referred to as the Kugel's artery. This Kugel's artery is also referred to as arteria anastomotica auricularis magna. Now, there are some collateral circulation. So, in the subepicardial fat, there are communication between the branches of the right and left coronary arteries as well as the branches of the internal thoracic artery and descending aorta. Some of the branches are the pericardial, bronchial, phrenic and the esophageal branches. And in the inner 75 to 100 micrometer of the endothelial surface gets nutrition directly from the blood in the cardiac chambers. Now, what is the clinical significance? So, we have learned about the coronary arteries, its course, branches and all the peculiarities. Now, what is the clinical significance? The most important factor is that these coronary arteries are the only vessels that fill during diastole. Now, you might have heard about the term ischemic heart disease. So, in almost all the developed countries, the most common cause of death is the ischemic heart disease. Why is it so? You might have heard about the atheromatous plaques. So, atheromatous plaques means plaque formation occurs. So, any crack or ulcer in the plaque through which the platelets get deposited and thrombus forms. So, this can be gradual or sudden, incomplete or complete. So, if there is incomplete or spasmodic obstruction, then what will happen? The cardiac fibers cannot respire aerobically. Then anaerobic waste products gets accumulated in the cardiac fibers leading to pain. So, that is referred to as the angina pectoris. Now, this angina pectoris lasts for about 5 to 10 minutes and after the patient takes rest for 5 to 10 minutes, it gets relieved. So, this is occurring in case of incomplete or spasmodic obstruction. Next is a myocardial infarction or commonly known as MI. So, it occurs when there is complete obstruction. So, you know that the myocardial, the heart cells has got zero regeneration capacity. So, if it is obstructed, the vessels are obstructed and if the blood supply to the cardiac fibers are lost, there is zero regeneration capacity and these will be replaced only by fibrous tissue. So, that can lead to myocardial infarction and if it is not treated within time, that can lead to the death of the patient. It is said, we have discussed that in old age, the anastomotic networks increase in number. So, there is more prognosis in case of old age. And in females, it is said that there is a protective effect of the estrogen that prevents them from having the myocardial infarction. The anterior wall MI or the MI affecting the anterior wall is mainly due to the obstruction of the left coronary artery and the inferior wall MI is mainly due to the obstruction of the right coronary artery. Now, which vessel is most commonly obstructed in case of myocardial infarction? The most commonly affected blood vessel is the anterior endoventricular artery, which is a branch of the left coronary artery, or which is also known as the left anterior descending artery. So, since it occurs more commonly in men and since it causes death in men, it is also referred to as artery of sudden death or widowmaker artery. So, you might have heard about the Rayford pain. That means the pain of the MI can radiate to the inner aspect of your left arm, then a right arm, jaw, epigastrium. Why this happens? The pain can refer to the inner aspect of your left arm because the pain fibers from the heart are carried by the sympathetic cardiac nerves and they reach the T1 to T5 segments of the spinal cord via the dorsal root ganglia of the left side. So, since it is passing through the dorsal root ganglia of the left side to the T1 to T5 segments of spinal cord, in that region, that dermatomal region, you will have pain. Similarly, sometimes there will be some connector neurons connecting these segments of the opposite side. So, that can lead to pain radiating to the right side. Now, sometimes the pain can radiate to the neck. So, initially we say the embryonic heart was initially in the neck and later descended to the thorax. So, these pain fibers can also reach the upper cervical nerves via the sympathetics. That's why the pain occurs in the jaw. Now, why does the pain refers to the epigastrium? This is because the fibrous pericardium, that is, you know about the fibrous pericardium is covering of the heart, and the lesser omentum of the stomach both develop from the septum transversum. Because of this, the pain can radiate to the epigastrium. So these are the reasons for the cardiac referred pain. Now, we have discussed about myocardial infarction, and now we'll see about the occlusion of the coronary artery. So most commonly, clinically you can visualize occlusion of the first 2 centimeter of the left angular descending and the circumflex artery, and also the proximal and distal 1/3 of the right coronary artery. Now, if all these 3 vessels are affected, we can say this is referred to as the triple vessel disease. Now, what is the frequency of this coronary artery obstruction? So, in 40 to 50% patients, the left angular descending artery is affected, whereas in 30 to 40% patients, the right coronary artery is affected, and in 15 to 20% patients, the circumflex artery is affected. Now, some of the investigations that you can do are electrocardiogram, that is the ECG. Then you can check for the myocardial enzymes in blood, that is troponin, creatine kinase, lactate dehydrogenase. Then you can do thrombolysis, that is the thrombus can be lysed. These are by injecting some medicines like streptokinase, alteplase. Then you can do a procedure known as angiogram. Now, what do you mean by angiogram? Angiogram means visualization of the arterial system. So that can be done in any part of your body to visualize any arterial system. So when you're doing it to visualize the coronary arteries, that is known as coronary angiogram. So you know about the femoral artery. You can palpate it at the median point. The femoral artery is a continuation of the external iliac artery. So what you have to do is, you have to palpate the femoral artery about 3 cm below the median point, insert cannula, and through that you have to insert a guide wire. So that should pass from the femoral artery, then from femoral artery to the external iliac artery, then common iliac artery, abdominal aorta, then descending thoracic aorta, arch of aorta, then from there to the ascending aorta and to the aortic sinuses. So after the guide wire has reached the aortic sinuses, you have to insert another flexible plastic tube through this route into the aortic sinuses. So after it has reached there, you have to remove the guide wire. Okay, so initially you have to insert the guide wire, then the flexible plastic tube. So after the plastic tube has reached there, you have to remove the guide wire. Now you can inject the contrast dye to visualize the arterial system. So this procedure is referred to as the angiogram. That is, you inject the contrast dye and then take X-rays. Then you can visualize the arterial system. So after visualizing the arterial system, if you see any block in the right or left coronary artery, what you have to do? Next step is, you can do angioplasty or balloon angioplasty. That means you have to insert another tube with balloon. You have to insert it, and it should be reached till the site of obstruction. So when it reaches the site of obstruction, you have to inflate and deflate it. So inflation and deflation should be continuous. So what will happen? That will squeeze away the thrombus. This is referred to as a balloon angioplasty. Then for permanent procedures, you can insert stent also. The stent, that is a tube with the wire mesh, that can also be inserted. And you can do the coronary artery bypass grafting. So for that you can use either saphenous vein, or you can use the internal mammary artery graft or the radial artery graft. So in the figure you can see the one saphenous vein graft is from the arch of aorta to the right coronary artery distal to its obstruction. Another graft, an arterial graft, that is internal mammary artery graft, from the left subclavian artery to the left coronary artery distal to its obstruction. Now, this is a figure showing the balloon angioplasty. You can see the balloon that is inflating and deflating so that the thrombus gets dissolved. And you can see the graft placed here. Here there is saphenous vein as well as internal mammary artery graft. And this is a stent with wire mesh that can be placed permanently. Now, we said that there are many types of grafts. One is saphenous vein graft. Another one is internal mammary artery graft, which is also known as internal thoracic artery graft. Then radial artery graft. So in saphenous vein graft, you know that the saphenous vein has got valves to pump the blood upwards. So what you have to do? You have to reverse the graft. So only then the blood will flow from above downwards. You have to place it in such a way so that the graft is reversed. The next one is the internal mammary artery or internal thoracic artery graft. Usually the left internal mammary artery graft is used. You can term it as Lima graft. Now why this internal mammary artery is preferred? It is preferred because it has got elastic tissue in its walls, and its endothelium has got a particular substance that is which acts like fibrinolytic substance that prevents the atherosclerosis, and there is less chance of restenosis if you use internal mammary artery graft. You can also use the radial artery for the grafting, but before using the radial artery, please ensure that the ulnar artery is patent by doing the Allen's test. This is an image of a graft placed in heart of a cadaver. Now we'll see the venous drainage. The 60% of blood from the heart drains to the right atrium via the coronary sinus, whereas 40% of blood are drained into the different cardiac chambers via venae caudae minimi or Thebetian veins and anterior cardiac veins. Now, coronary sinus, you might have heard about coronary sinus. This is the largest vein of the heart and it is located in the posterior part of the coronary sulcus. So what is its course? You can see here it arises from the left part of the atrioventricular groove and it travels to the right along the posterior part of the atrioventricular groove. And then it ends in the sinus venerum of the right atrium, which is between the opening of the inferior vena cava and the tricuspid orifice. Now, this along its course, it is accompanied by the anastomosis between the right and left coronary arteries. You know that because since it is traveling along the posterior part of coronary sulcus, that is the posterior part of the atrioventricular groove, where you have the anastomosis of the right coronary artery and the circumflex branch of the left coronary artery. So these vessels are accompanied by the coronary sinus. Now it is this opening is related to the AV node, and also these are guarded by Thebetian valves. So we see the tributaries. So all the tributaries have got valves except one tributary that is known as the oblique vein of the left atrium. Now the first tributary is the great cardiac vein. So you can see here it arises from the apex and it runs along the anterior interventricular groove and it joins with the coronary sinus at the left end of the heart, and this also receives the left marginal vein. So that is one of the tributaries. The next one is middle cardiac vein. So middle cardiac vein is passing along the posterior interventricular groove and then it joins near the right end of the coronary sinus. Next one is small cardiac vein. So small cardiac vein passes along the right atrioventricular groove. It opens at the right end of the sinus and it receives the right marginal vein. Other vessels are posterior vein of the left ventricle. So it drains the inferior surface of the left ventricle. It ends in the sinus on the left side of the middle cardiac vein. You can visualize that it ends on the left side of the middle cardiac vein. Now the last one is the oblique vein of the left atrium. So I had told initially only oblique vein of left atrium does not have valves because this supplies the posterior surface of the left atrium. So since it supplies the posterior surface of left atrium, this drains blood from above downwards. So it does not need valve. That's why it does not have any valve. And it is considered to be a remnant of left duct of Cuvier. Now there are some veins that do not join the coronary sinus, but they take part in draining the blood from the heart. So these are anterior cardiac veins. So you can see here there are 3 to 4 parallel veins which are present on the anterior wall of the right ventricle. These drain the infundibula and they open in the right atrium via the foramen venera minimum. And there are many venae caudae minimi or Thebetian veins also that drain about 40% of blood into the cardiac chambers. Now the applied aspects of the coronary sinus are you can do coronary sinus cannulation to pick the arrhythmia. Then coronary sinus pacing can be done, which prevents the induction of atrial fibrillation, and coronary sinus approach is also used for transcatheter mitral valve repair. So before concluding, we'll have a look at anastomosis. That means we have seen interarterial anastomosis. We have seen many anastomotic networks. Similarly, in coronary venous anastomosis also are there. Now, there are some other anastomosis also. So, other than the interarterial, you have also got the arteriovenous anastomosis. So, what is the significance of arteriovenous anastomosis? If there is any block in the artery, so definitely the blood from the coronary sinus will regurgitate back to the artery. So, that's how the anastomosis will be established. Then you have got arteriosinusoidal anastomosis. That means the arteries breaks up into many sinusoids and anastomosis can occur. Then you have got sinusoidal anastomosis, and sinoluminal. So sinusoidal between the vein and the sinusoids, as well as the sinusoids and the lumen. Then you have arterioluminal, that means between the arteries and the lumen. Then the last one is luminosynusoid. Luminosynusoid is a vestigial type of anastomosis. It is not seen in man. That means from the lumen, the anastomosis can occur towards the sinusoids to supply the myocardium. So that is all about different types of anastomosis or different types of myocardial circulation other than the interarterial circulation. So we have discussed about the entire blood supply of heart. We have discussed in detail about the arterial supply and the venous drainage. Usually blood supply of heart is asked as essay question, and right coronary artery, left coronary artery can also be separately asked. So I hope you understood this topic. Thank you.